Hello and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where we dive deep into regional headlines. I speak with leading policymakers and business leaders. I am Katie Jensen. 3 months into Lebanon's new political landscape, many are hailing the election of President Joseph Aoun as the birth of a new republic. On this episode, we speak with Lebanese economist and political analyst Nadim Shehadi. Can the new president deliver on his promises of reform and economic revival? Or will the persistent influence of Hezbollah permanently hinder his chances of success? Plus, we examine America's evolving role in the country and explore whether normalization with Israel could be on the cards. Mr. Shehadi, thank you so much for joining us on Frankly Speaking. It is wonderful to have you back on the show. Now, obviously, a lot has happened since the last time we spoke. So let's begin with your home country of Lebanon. Now, many have described the election of President Joseph Aoun as the birth of a new republic. Frankly speaking, do you think that is accurate, or are people being too optimistic? Obviously, now we have a new central bank governor in Beirut as well. So tell me, does Lebanon actually stand a chance this time around to gain its independence, peace and prosperity at last?
Well, I mean, there is certainly a lot of optimism, not just because of local developments in Lebanon, but because of major regional ones and international development. So it looks like the international and regional forces are aligned to resolve the problems of the region as a whole, not just of Lebanon. And that's the cause of the optimism, because a lot of the problems here depend on a regional solution in a way. So the election of General Aoun, which came with international support, and he's also, I mean, one of the significant features is that he's also from outside the political establishment, if you like. And same with the prime minister has also been brought in from outside the political establishment. So that's another cause for optimism.
And tell me, I mentioned a moment ago, obviously we have the new central bank governor in Beirut as well. Talk me through the real significance of that. How important will his role be in really turning Lebanon around?
But the biggest question is where are the losses going to go? There are billions of dollars that have disappeared from the banks and from the central banks. These are the depositors' money and the bank's money in a way. And so the big question is, who will bear the cost of that? And the way you resolve this should also set the country on a path to recovery. And the binary view of this is that it is the state versus the banks. But in reality, Lebanon cannot survive without the banks, and Lebanon cannot survive without the state. So there's going to be a middle ground, hopefully favoring the banking system, because I believe that the banking system is the main engine of the economy, and the new governor has a huge job.
So after an economic meltdown, after years of corruption and the migration of its best talent, what do you think Lebanon needs right now in order to be rebuilt? What would you prescribe as a rescue plan?
Okay, Katie, what you said is a very dominant narrative about Lebanon, that it was years of corruption. What happened in Lebanon and the reason for the meltdown is not years of corruption. What happened is the result of years of the state and society being pounded, being battered, if you like, through assassinations, through declarations of war, through paralysis of government. We've had 3 periods of between 2 to 3 years of total paralysis with no president, no government, and parliament in a way. We've had 2 million Syrian refugees, which are a huge burden on the economy. We've had a constant state of war in the sense that every year, Lebanon, if you like, or Hezbollah, declares war on Israel 5 times, and that paralyzes the economy. That cancels trips, cancels investment opportunities. So all of that accumulated cost of the paralysis, the wars, that is what brought the country down. It's not. It's not the. It's wrong to emphasize the corruption of the country as a reason for.
Well, I mean, I think that's been a big part of it, and I think, you know, many times the rich political elite have preferred the system to stay that way. The poor remaining poor and powerless, and the rich only getting richer.
I don't agree.
I
don't agree.
Okay.
This is a narrative which is very dominant. The rich political elite wants stability. The rich and the bankers want stability. The financiers want stability, because they are very invested in the country. There has been a wrong narrative that has been set in. I don't blame you for repeating it, because it is a dominant one and needs to be changed. That's a key element in the recovery, because the key element in the recovery of the country is the regaining confidence.
Okay, but when we talk about rebuilding that confidence and bringing that stability that Lebanon so desperately needs, there's still a lot of questions that surround Hezbollah. You mentioned them just a moment ago. As we know, Hezbollah still has presence in both the parliament and the government, not to mention it's still armed. And while its leadership has been eliminated, the ideology remains there. And what Israel, whether intentionally or not, has done is eliminated only its ability to hurt Israel, but not actually caused internal damage. Tell me, are you worried that this will continue to be a spoiler?
Absolutely. This is the main issue. And the question is not a destruction of Hezbollah or of its infrastructure. The question is the liberation of the community, of the Shia community, from the grip of Hezbollah. The only Achilles heel of Hezbollah is if its own enabling environment, if you like, decides that their agenda is a bad one and they need to move on and join the country like everybody else. They are an integral part of the country. Even the institutions of Hezbollah that are being targeted, the economic institutions of Hezbollah, the money is not Hezbollah's money. The money is, to a large part, that of the community, and that money has been hijacked by Hezbollah. So the destruction harms the whole country in a sense. So the question is to liberate the country and liberate the Shia community from the grip of Hezbollah, and that's mainly a political process.
Well, let's talk about some of the other changes underway. And I want to talk about the US here. Now, President Trump, he's appointed a new ambassador to Lebanon. We know the US has one of the largest embassies in the world in Lebanon. And the US envoy Morgan Ortagus, he seems to be pretty engaged with your country. So tell me, what is America aiming at? And do you see Lebanon eventually becoming an American protectorate?
Well, I have no knowledge of behind the scenes. I can only tell you what I observe from, the scene itself. There's certainly a new approach. You see, the American policy was between, I once said that the Sunni Shia divide is stronger in Washington, D.C. than it is in the region, in the sense that the Republicans would look for a solution in cooperation with the Gulf states and in a cooperation with the agenda of the Gulf states. And the Democrats, certainly the Biden administration and the Obama administration before them, were looking for a solution through Iran, through an agreement with Iran, which we in the region saw at the expense of the Arab Gulf states and the other states in the region, and strengthening Iran. So the optimistic view now is that the Trump administration is looking for cooperation with the Arab states, and the objectives of the Arab state are a peace in the region and stability, and going away from the old order of the region, which was dominated by the Ba'ath Party and on all that, the Arab nationalist parties, which wanted to dominate the region at the expense of countries' sovereignty.
Okay, well, when we talk about
in a way, the ironic thing is that now that we have an order where each state is engaged with its own agenda, with its own well-being, it's Lebanon first, Syria first, Saudi first, and cooperation is easier. The cooperation between states that respect each other's sovereignty and that look for their own interest is far smoother and easier than between ideological states who want to dominate the region, like Saddam Hussein or like Hafez al-Assad or Iran.
Okay, so you say we are seeing more cooperation between other countries in the region, a real emphasis, a real push for peace. Let me ask your thoughts on Israel. Do you think that normalization between Israel and Lebanon could be on the table soon? And Mr. Shehadi, I ask because there was a recent Anahar piece that Steve Witkoff has met with a Lebanese envoy to discuss exactly that. Tell me, do you think it's foreseeable that Lebanon can opt to sign before a two-state solution is agreed or before other regional countries do so?
I don't think that normalization is possible without a solution to the Palestinian issue, especially not with Lebanon, and also not with Saudi Arabia. I mean, that's declared position. We're all adhering to the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002, which was declared in Beirut. But Lebanon can also look back to an agreement in May 1983, which was called the 17th of May Agreement, which I think is the best Lebanon can achieve with Israel, going back to the armistice line and guaranteeing each other's security in a sense, and borders, and this includes the maritime borders and the sharing of resources there. So I think if we can go back to something similar, that would be the best option now, especially considering the internal political situation. We internally, there are lots of issues that need to be resolved. And there are lots of issues that need to resolve with Israel. I mean, Israel's bombing of the country is not conducive to peace. It's not a way of getting yourself loved, if you like, by the way they destroyed the villages and all that. So there would be a resistance to normalization for internal reasons, and because we do not see Israel as being in a mood for peace.
Okay, well, let me ask you about some of those alternatives, because a Lebanese source revealed to Ashak al-Assad that the US is pushing Lebanon towards an agreement with Israel. That would be less than normalization, but more than a ceasefire agreement. Do you have any further information on this, and can you evaluate the likelihood of it, particularly if you're saying that full normalization is off the cards?
Well, yes, I mean, absolutely. That's exactly what is needed. And we have, in a way, reached that deal through the previous government, which also included Hezbollah. So the ceasefire agreement with the government of Prime Minister Mikati can lead to such a deal if we adhere to it, and if Israel adheres to it, and if Hezbollah adheres to it as well. So that's also another reason for optimism that the actual deal was done with the participation of all parties, not just by the president and the prime minister.
Okay, well, let's unpack that a little bit more, because you say a deal essentially like that has already been done. So if we were to further expand on that, is it actually in Lebanon's interests? I mean, yes, it would garner a lot more US support, both from a military and financial standpoint, which Lebanon desperately needs, but would it not risk divisions inside what is already a highly divided country?
Yes, I mean, you see, division is I mean, I hope that we all consider division as a normal state, sense that it is normal politics. So we have, apart from the military aspects, which hopefully will cease, we have political differences in the country. Lots of countries have political differences and need to sort them out through a democratic process, through state institutions, through the parliament, through politicians agreeing, and with the help of regional and international powers because of the regional dimension of the problem. So I do not consider that the divisions are a weakness. On the contrary, these are divisions that if resolved, will come out with a much stronger agreement than an agreement imposed through force or without any discussion.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of the other divisions with neighbouring countries. We know Lebanon has had ongoing issues with Syria for many years, and there's obviously been significant changes in Syria underway since December last year. But I think what started as reassuring signs quickly developed into a military confrontation at the border. So tell me, as a long-standing expert on this topic, how do you see the future of Lebanese-Syrian relations?
Well, I see them very much like that as future of Lebanese and Syrian relations. It's we need to have a new enter a new phase, but the whole region is entering a new phase also. The phase we are getting out of, which we have been uh, uh, in for probably the last half century, was one which did not respect the sovereignty of individual countries in the region. Was one dominated by political parties that aim to dominate their neighbors, like the Ba'ath Party. I mean, the example is Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait, of course, and Syrian intervention in Lebanon, and Syrian problems with Turkey, with Jordan. So we had an order which is changing. We're entering a new order. And hopefully that order will be more in line with the original protocols that set up the Arab League in 1944, which was the Alexandria Protocols, which enhanced cooperation between the Arab countries, both cultural and economic, but also respect for each other's sovereignty.
And do you believe that President Ahmed al-Sharaa generally has no interest in having influence over Lebanese internal politics?
Well, I have to believe what I see, and I have to be. One has to give the benefit of the doubt to the new government, and we can see it. We can see from here through our Syrian friends who are going back to Syria the change of atmosphere there, which is amazing. So we are very optimistic that can reach a new type of relationship with Syria.
Well, obviously, there is a long history, a lot of history between the two countries. Tell me, what do you think of the disputed files of political prisoners and land, such as the Shabar farms?
It's not such a long history. It's half a century. We have thousands of years of history.
But I
And the
mean,
leaders
significant
of the
events as part of
region
that.
are dates from ancient times. What we've had for about half a century or 70 years, in fact, 60, 70 years, is an order in the region which is now disappearing, hopefully, and which was dominated by intervention in each other's affairs. So probably Lebanon has been in trouble since the Assad regime started took over in Syria, and the whole region has been unsettled by that, and the manner of the Assad regime, the sort of the method of governance of the Assad regime or the Assad playbook is to create problems and uh, operate on almost on extortionate grounds. Even with the Gulf countries, that was the way the relationship was with them.
And there are still issues between Syria and Lebanon, but we're seeing a lot more progress when it comes to Lebanon and Saudi Arabia. We saw President Joseph Aoun seem to have quite a successful visit to Saudi Arabia recently, where he met the leadership. But I noticed the travel ban has not been lifted yet, so a visit to Lebanon is not yet possible. When do you think that will happen? And how true is it that there could be another state visit whereby bilateral agreements will be signed between the two countries?
I mean, about another state visit, I read it. I read the same news as you do, and I think it would be normal. And which is Saudi-Lebanese relations, and in fact, Saudi-Syrian relations as well, uh, are quite solid historically since the foundation of the kingdom. Since King Abdulaziz was surrounded by advisors from Syria and from Lebanon. You had foreign ministers and ambassadors and negotiators. Uh, there are deeply rooted relations between Saudi society and Lebanese society through migration and through business relations. I'm optimistic that this will come back. That this is I mean, the normal state of affairs is good relation. What we had in the last probably 15 years was an exception. It was not the normal state of affairs. It's not the default uh, uh, state of relations between.
Well, speaking of Saudi Arabia, do you think that they have changed tactics from supporting a particular prime minister who in your constitution has to be Sunni to supporting the head of state and ensuring that the head of state who turned the last 6 years and does not change is able to enforce law, order and stabilising policies?
I don't think that was ever that clear cut that they support this prime minister because the prime minister is Sunni. Uh, they, Saudi Arabia had allies in Lebanon and supported the country, and had opponents from. I don't think it was determined by sect or religion. That's. I don't think the kingdom behaves that way.
Okay, well, let's refocus on some of the main goals of the new leadership of Lebanon. President Aoun did give a number of pledges during his impressive inauguration speech. He talked a lot about the importance of strengthening the rule of law, of stopping exporting mayhem to neighbouring countries, and to really assist his people in getting their money back from the banks. That's something we talked about a bit earlier. 3 months in, do you think he is capable of keeping these premises? And to you, what of his pledges really stood out?
Well, I, I mean, the answer is no, of course, because he's promised so much, but it looks like he is setting the country on a path to achieve these goals, on a path to have a permanent ceasefire and an agreement with Israel that would stabilize the border, and on a path to remove the arms of Hezbollah and of the Palestinian factions that were basically allies of Syria. So the Palestinian arms in Lebanon are to a large extent part of the Syrian interference in the country. So that's on the security level, and on the most difficult problem will be the depositors' money, and I think the appointment of this current governor of the central bank is a good indication. It was very controversial. The country was, I mean, there was a huge debate about it, and I'm not sure all the promises of returning the funds of the depositors is possible, but certainly getting the banking sector back on track will help the country recover.
Clearly some huge ambitions. And look, I hate to keep going back to Hezbollah, but if they don't disarm voluntarily, do you think that President Ayoun will instruct the army to do it by force? The president did say the role of protecting the nation and carrying arms lies exclusively with the army. Do you think he will act on that?
No, I don't think he ever meant to say that either. That the arm, he never meant that the Lebanese army would clash with Hezbollah and disarm Hezbollah by force. That was never on the cards and will never be on the cards. And it's not possible. Even if it was possible, it's not desirable, because reconstituting the country, putting it back on track, includes a political agreement between all its components. But he is very firm, and so is the prime minister, and so are many of the government, about not tolerating the state of affairs that existed before September this year. And I don't think that it is possible for Hezbollah to return to that state of affairs. I don't think its own constituency would accept that. And that's the biggest the biggest factor, is the constituency of Hezbollah.
Well, time will tell. Mr. Shehadi, thank you so much for joining us today on Frankly Speaking. Really appreciate your insights. Thank you so much for joining us.